Okay, so Mr. Horn here. Today will be the upload of the summary video of The Intellectual Life by by Antonin Sertillanges. Sertillanges, I don't know how to really pronounce his name, but that's fine. Before we head into the video, I'd like to give an introduction to the series. So, first of all, I want to make it very clear that I do not intend on falling to the consumption fallacy, which might be a term I just coined, I don't know. It simply means that a lot of people assume that reading more books or consuming more content automatically means more learning. This is not necessarily true. It depends on how you use the information. If you merely consume the content passively, nothing positive will come of it, except for maybe a little bit of information or inspiration. And even if you actively make linear notes and transform the material into flashcards, you will not get much benefit from the content. However, I will not go into the details of how to learn efficiently in this video, simply because it is outside the scope. But stay tuned for content on this material on how to learn efficiently will come in the future, somewhere this year even to be specific. What I will do with the books I read throughout the series is analyze them using higher order thinking, analysis, and evaluation. Um, yes, and use them to further develop my thoughts and research for all of my projects. In addition, if it's a self-improvement book, like The Intellectual Life, which is the spotlight of this video, I will also look at the actionable advice, and if I find it valuable enough, and I'm also not doing it already, I will definitely start implementing the advice behind the scenes. So you won't see me doing that, most likely. In addition, the thought development part will happen after I have read the book, and thus also after I upload the videos, as this is the process that is happening non-linearly, and as I go throughout my internet Zetterkast, which is a system developed by Niklas Luhmann for the purpose of developing thought and being a prolific writer. However, a lot of people on YouTube who suggest this method, the Zetterkast, misunderstand what the system is about, and based on misconceptions in Dr. Zunke Arendt's book titled How to Take Smart Notes, which is not a bad book. It's actually a book I would recommend slightly, but it's also kind of, yeah, it contains misinformation about Zettelkasten. So if you want to get to the true material of Zettelkasten, the true spirit of it, and the true method, which I recommend to most intellectuals and nonfiction writers, then you should take a look at Scott Shepper on YouTube. I might put the link to his channel in the description. And read Niklas Luhmann's own paper titled Communication in Slipboxes, translation by Manfred Koehn, if I pronounce that correctly, as well as Johannes Schmidt's articles on it. With this out of the way, let me present the format in which I go through the book a week summary videos. I will usually start by providing what Mortimer Jeremy Adler would call the unity of the book, or the plotline of the book, meaning the essence. What is it that the entire book is about? Next, I will provide some quotes, passages, as well as premises and points that touched me in particular or that I find worthy enough to mention with regards to the unity of the book. Finally, I will say if I recommend to people to read the book, and if so, whom I recommend it to. Now, with that out of the way, to the meat of the video, The Intellectual Life, written by Antonin Sertillanges, a Catholic in 1934, is a book about, well, the intellectual life. That's the unity. That's seriously the unity of the book. So I will now go on to the quotes passages. Okay, no, I'm kidding. The intellectual life is about living your life in pursuit of the truth, that is, knowledge. It is about living your life serving your vocation, not your vacation, but your vocation, which is knowledge. The servitude of knowledge does not simply mean devoting your life to study for yourself, i.e., consuming as much books as possible, or even to consume a few books on mastery levels. No, the intellectual life is about studying and pursuing truth for the community. The business of knowledge work is to share your knowledge only, is to share knowledge. Only by pursuing, uh, only by participating in knowledge exchange can you advance society, which I got from Hans-Georg Müller's The Radical Lumen. Thus, the life of an intellectual is not only to study for memory or knowledge for the self, for yourself, but it is also to write and express one's mind in written form, or in my case, it can, in the modern sense, it can of course also be on YouTube or on video or whatever, or even in the form of a course, which I will do later, to share what one knows and thinks with the world. But even this is not everything the author says this life is about. He also says that you must serve truth in all areas of life, not just work, but also in your social life and your religious life. And more does. For example, he states that when talking, seek to learn from everyone, for even the stupidest mind has some truth in it, as it is man who is created in the image of God, who is truth. Thus, every single person has some truth in it, for every single person is created in the image of God. Thus, consider not the mouth who speaks, but rather the words that are spoken. And this suggestion by Antonin Sertillanges also reminds me of two quotes. Namely, the wisest mind has something yet to learn, by Confucius, if I pronounced that correctly. And smart people learn from everything and everyone, average people from their experiences, and stupid people already have all the answers, by Socrates. Those are two quotes that really resonate with me, and this suggestion by Sertillanges reminded me actually of these two quotes, so that's why I wanted to share them as well. Sertillanges also says that the intellectual mind must always be somewhat active, meaning that in the day-to-day life, when not in study, also question the why behind things and try to relate your experience with what you're studying at the moment. One thing that stood out to me in this book, written in 1934, is the fact that then already the author recommended flow procedures, which is an awesome book by Csikszentmihalyi, that I also highly recommend. Sertillanges says that half work is the same as bad work. Work with half focus, half rest doesn't contribute to either rest or work. Instead, when working, work fully, laser focused, and when resting, rest only. Do not do something in between. He recommends to thus also challenge yourself, so that your spirit and mind may grow, which forces you to focus, and in the same way is also a recommendation for flow. In the same manner, what has stood out to me was his suggestion of networked thinking, or relating concepts and ideas to each other, also based on a relative importance. This essentially is higher order learning, and if I am not mistaken, has only been researched much later than 1934. He argues, correctly, that loose information remembered in isolation, without a logical larger system of conceptual knowledge on top, will not be recalled easily and thus forgotten. A quote from the author on page 108 is, "The mind does not really learn except by seeking out the relation of cause and effect." Another passage that has really stood out to me is this, on page 123. An active mind is constantly in search of some truth, which for it, at the moment, is the representation of that integral truth to which it has vowed its service. The intelligence is like a child whose lips never sees their why. Does a good educator leave this fruitful, restless questioning unsatisfied? Does he not take advantage of this fresh curiosity as of a youthful appetite to give solid food to the nascent spiritual organism? He's essentially explaining how to take care of our minds, who always need to grow, being intellectuals. He does that throughout the rest of those surrounding pages. But the reason I find it primarily interesting is that he indirectly trashing most educators nowadays, most teachers in high schools and other schools, because they do not fulfill the why question. They do not answer the why question. They do not answer why is it important to learn? How can I implement this in my individual life? And that is also one of my biggest criticisms on the current education system. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. And it is also a passage that is perfectly explaining my love for older books, as the style of writing is somewhat more philosophical in nature, which I am a massive fan of. I just like older language. So yeah, Something that I will implement behind the scenes that Sertillanges recommended is working out and having my window open to get more fresh air inside. Sertillanges argues that to take great care of the body is an intellectual virtue. And to be honest, I have yet to be doing this. I've never really liked working out and walking, running, sporting, stuff like that. I thought that is not for me. But upon reading this, I realized that I really need to start doing that actually. So that's something I will be implementing after this behind the scenes. I have to plan that in and think about that. But that's something that's going to happen in the following months. So because I don't want to make this video too long, I will just move on to a summation of the book right now, which is that the author goes into the following aspects, which is what intellectualism is, how you manage your time. So to be an intellectual, he also goes into, which I find pretty funny, is how the wife of an intellectual should behave. He goes into how you should learn, read, and make notes, like an intellectual. He also explains how to take care of the body and your needs to aid your intellectual activities. Or actually, of course, they are part of your intellectual activities, but that's something he goes into. He also explains the need for solitude when it comes to intellectualism, to be alone, to not be disturbed, etc., etc. He also explains how to behave and talk as a wise intellectual. And those are actually the main sections. And he goes into more, but also more into depth, into the things I just mentioned. Yeah, these are like the main overarching sections. Now, to who would I recommend this book? Mainly to those who want to live their lives into pursuit of knowledge, but also to non-fiction writers and students. Why students? Because he lays a clear foundation for the mindset and characteristics a learner should have. And also because he explains proper virtues of a good person, which I find lacking most of the time in young people, myself included in the past. To finish this video, I would like to share a passage by Sertillanges describing his view of an intellectual on page 241. The intellectual I have in view is a man of wide and varied knowledge complementary to a special study thoroughly pursued. He loves the arts and natural beauty. His mind shows itself to be one in everyday occupations and in meditation. He is the same man in the presence of God, of his fellows, and of his mate, carrying within him a field of ideas and feelings that are not only written down in books and discourses, but flow into conversation with his friends and guide his life. Now, furthermore, I also want to note after this video that I could have gone into way more depth on these videos, in this video and on the book, but that would really lengthen the video, and it's already like pretty long for a starting YouTube channel. It's like almost 15 minutes already. But on the other hand, it also would require me to have more time and more effort, because I cannot spend too much time reading the books, as I also have other priorities and occupations that I really need to do. And the primary digestion for my process comes from the Zettelkasten. I could also use mind maps to actually learn the material, and that would be faster, but it will also for me be less enjoyable, and I need to learn mind mapping as well. So if I really want to go into more depth, I need to do it afterwards, when I have actually processed the entire book through my Zettelkasten, which likely is a few days from now. But yeah, that's why I won't do this with the books, and that's why my videos will also be a little bit like less detailed, less in-depth. But yeah, I felt like you should know that. So yeah, that was this video, and stay tuned for the next one, which will be next week. And I will not spoiler the book, I will read the coming week, but you will see that in the next video. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you really enjoyed the video, also share it with friends who might need it. Goodbye.